everyone, this is Gerald Clark with Seven Planet Broadcasting. I had the unique opportunity to do a dialogue / interview with Ian Bozic today. He's originally from Slovenia and ended up in London about 7 years ago. And he's doing a kind of an interview on the Anunnaki for his peeps back in Slovenia. So I'm going to have him introduce himself and tell us about yourself. Tell us who you're writing for and why you even care to share this with your people back in Slovenia. Okay, Ian, go ahead.
Hi, Gerald. I'm really happy and grateful to speak to you. As you mentioned, I'm a journalist for 22 years. Originally, I come from Slovenia. And the magazine I'm working for is Demokracija. It's a print magazine. And after 7 years ago, I moved to UK. And 7 years ago, actually, I started, first I noticed these stories about Anunnaki that came out. And I was reading about this a lot. And I think you are the best one on this subject, so I decided to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, were you hearing about the Anunnaki in Slovenia, or were you hearing about the Anunnaki in London?
Oh, actually, when the YouTube came out, that's the first thing you find, and then you start reading books, because I like to read books. You get more information there, and it's not really misleading.
I'm going to adjust over here because the light's a little better. Yeah, so you're a reader. Are there readers back in Slovenia that you think would assimilate this kind of information? Because I thought there were in Romania, but I never heard back from many of those people. I published my book in Romania about 4 years ago. So,
and how did it go?
I've never heard from the publisher or have no idea. This happens when you do international contracts sometimes.
That's not nice.
I hope they hear this and get in touch with me and tell me it went really well and we square up and everything's good. That'd be fine. But we can't dilly-dally too much. You submitted me, oh my God, 19 or 20 questions.
And the new questions keep popping.
Yeah. So we got a bunch of questions here. They're not in any particular chronological order, just they're just in order. So, and sometimes I like to be surprised about what somebody's going to ask me, because I've done this like 300 times, from the data, so it's all memorized for me. Do you want to get started on
okay, yeah.
Talking about some of these issues that you're going to share? Are you going to share this just with Slovenia, or are you going to be publishing this on social media? Is it going to be available to people in the UK?
Well, if I have your permission, I would like to publish it further.
Yeah, well,
as maybe even a video, yeah.
Well, if you're going to do that, then tell people where they can find it. Either now, or you can wait to the end and tell them so they know where to find this. And we'll put it in the links too, okay?
We'll put the links, yeah.
Okay, because they probably don't know anybody in Slovenia. Yeah. I guess you said Croatia too, right?
Yeah, Croatia. Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Macedonia. That was one country, Yugoslavia, and then war broke up and everything split apart. Yeah. But we understand each other because it's very similar language. Yeah, all countries.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you want to jump in here and start talking about what you want to know about the Anunnaki?
Well, yeah. First, I would like to ask you a question. You were raised as a Christian, yeah, Protestant Christian, and I was always wondering what made you to see the Bible from a different perspective that set you out on a journey to seek the truth about the true origins of mankind.
Hey, these are really fantastic questions. I think I'm going to put my headphones on, even though I look uglier like that. I'm worried that I might be getting some feedback from my speaker into my microphone. So if I do this, I won't. We'll have a really good recording, okay, just in case. Is that okay?
Okay.
That's not too ugly, is it? Okay. Let me switch the mic over here just to make sure I don't clobber myself. All right. should have done this first, but I wasn't thinking. Okay. Let's make that. So it's only coming out my headphones. Okay. All right. So I was raised, yes, I was raised, and we weren't really pushed, you know, as kids into religion. It was kind of something I ended up in on my own. I guess occasionally we would go to church with my parents and end up in Sunday school. When I was about 7, I guess it was about then. And then from there until maybe 10, 12, and kind of those formative years, it was Southern Baptist. I wasn't really a critical thinker at that point, and by the time I was 12 or 13, I think I'd been baptized in the Protestant religion. Okay, what made? Ooh.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened?
No, yeah. So what made me see the Bible from a different perspective? By the time I was 14, not much older than 14, I was a pretty critical thinker, and I was looking at issues that I saw in the Old Testament relative to the characteristics of what people were calling God. And I saw this as not a God. I saw this as some masquerading human that was asserting their control over the rest of the people and treating them badly. So I was very suspicious about the biblical writings. There were so many inconsistencies for me early on. But there were a lot of nuggets of truth. And I found in life that truth and lies are oftentimes mixed together. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter where your truth comes from. I don't care if it comes out of some, you know, rat-infested hole. It doesn't really matter. Wherever it comes from, if the truth is the truth, it's the truth. And sometimes you got to wipe it off and disinfect it with bleach and a whole bunch of other stuff before you can even approach it, because it's been masqueraded as a lie. But the truth can come from anywhere. So I saw truths in the Bible as well, historical truths, genealogical truths, a lot of chronological lies and relational lies too. I mean, you can just take the 2 genealogy tables from Adam to Noah from one account, and then the very next chapter it gives you to Adam and Noah, and it looks like they've copied the names and slightly changed them, like they're in some sort of competitive genealogical family war, so that this one was the same name as that one, so they got the same privilege. It looked like that to me. I was like, why would you do that? You know, and they weren't, and it wasn't even consistent. So, did you know that, like Genesis 4 in that region, Genesis 4, Genesis 6, there's tables of nations in there that just Adam to Noah, they just start right. I'm doing that from memory. I hope I didn't mess it up. Mm-hmm. So I was suspicious, okay? And later on, we can talk about what caused my head to spin around when I finally put a fork in religion for myself. You wanted to know in this next question who these.
Actually, yeah.
You want to ask it? Go. Why don't you ask it in your way? Okay.
Yeah, in your books, Anunnaki from Nibiru and the 7th planet Mercury rising, you were explaining how the extraterrestrials Anunnaki created mankind. Mm-hmm. But can you explain us who actually were the Anunnaki and why actually did they come here, and what was the main goal here on Earth?
I'll do this part kind of fast because you can get lost on all the details on this. My understanding is they were originally an ancient race from the Lion, or from a sector of the galaxy that was involved in the Lyran Wars. They got chased out of there. They ended up in the Alpha Draconis region, occupied the planet Nibiru, which everybody knows about, but they occupy other places as well, not just there. They're galactic colonizers looking for resources. When they find a place that has a life form that could be used to help with a hybridization program, they do that. So if there was a life form here that could help them, they probably hybridize it to help them do whatever manual task they had, okay? And it turns out in the Sumer documents, it looks like they call them the Anunnaki. They originally came here about 450,000 years ago during an upheaval on their planet relative to their atmosphere being destroyed in a retrograde passage near our sun, according to them. So they were bolstering their atmosphere with transition metals like gold to repel radiation, so that when they went back out toward aphelion, they didn't have a problem again, didn't have to deal with us again for, according to their records, another 3,600 years. But each time this happened, I can imagine that the civilization grew weary of having to go gather resources to bolster their atmosphere. So I really didn't see that as something that was going to last for long term. But that's where we came into the story, is apparently they were mining gold in South Africa. We have evidence of their gold mines from about 200,000 years ago, where they were using apparently a workforce and that we're not talking one mine, there's thousands of them in South Africa that are ancient. And Michael Tellinger went down there to find them, you know, so we found them, but so they treat this planet like, I don't know, kind of like a prison planet in a way. It's very unstable. The planet undergoes cyclic disturbances that destroy all. It looks like every dang culture that lives on the surface gets destroyed over time. And so they treat it as a temporary kind of prison planet where most of the hybrid workers, us, are enslaved doing their bidding and we don't even know it. And have been for thousands of years.
And how long have they been here? Did they left or are they still here?
Factions of them have been here since 450,000 years ago. They counted in SARS. A couple of their key top people that were on the top council. Okay, there was a council of 12 in Sumer. That's how we found out about their ruling structure and that they were all related. This is how, well, we'll wait for the next couple of questions to fill this in. But so you can imagine there's a family of them. They come from different factions. Some of them are in cahoots with each other, and other ones are opposed to each other. And there are little skirmishes and wars that break out between them that have been for a long time. So they're not, you know, they're pretty aggressive.
And I'm just trying to think, you know, because
you want to know how they could possibly still be here?
Yeah, and how is it possible for them to live that long? You know,
okay, yeah. Well, in the records, we asked
in this planet where there's so much radiation, probably they needed to adapt somehow.
Yeah, apparently they did have issues with gravity, radiation, air quality, how quickly the planet was circling the sun, our planet relative to theirs. All these had an impact on them, apparently. And it has impacts on life forms that only our astronauts are starting to discover in space programs, right? What does it do to you when you live in outer space, with low gravity and so on and so forth? So, according to their records, in the first part of the Sumerian Kings list, where we found out they had been here and how long, Berossus, a Babylonian priest, wrote all this down for us, by the way. Okay, and I got a copy of it from the Library of Congress, his official record of the Sumerian record from the kings. I thought that was so important because, you know, you want to find out about a culture, you find out about the people that could read and write and wrote records, and that was usually the hierarchy. So in their records, they said kingship was lowered to the earth for one of the very first cities on this planet, and they called it Eridu. Well, that's in southern Iraq, and it's still there. You can go see it on a Google Earth.
Just ruins, yeah.
Yeah, just ruins. So, so that's when they started their first Earth Station 1 outpost to start looking for resources here, in my opinion.
And who were these Igigi miners that came with them, or actually were they created here as well as humans?
Well, according to the record, there were some issues that were going on back on the prehistory on the Buru that caused them to come here. There were some exiles, some skirmishes, things like that. Apparently, when the scientist Enki came to attempt to find gold to use for their atmosphere, probably other stuff too. He brought 50 Igigi miners with him originally. These were probably some lower race from Nibiru that did all the work, right? These were workers, and they could have been Anunnaki just like he was, but they might have been a subset of their DNA, like we are. They could have been a different race altogether. Gigi may have just been a name they gave to, like they do in the Army, where they give you a designation of an MOS of 09 whiskey. That means you're a gopher and you can do anything, right? Anything we tell you to do, you do it. I don't know, but I think they were a different race. But they did call themselves fellow gods, okay, later in the story. Are they still here? Well, this lifespan thing has to be answered, because in the Sumerian Kings list, they were serving in terms of SARS, and a SAR, which is clearly 3,600 years, is a really long time. But one of them, the very first one, Alulim, who was the king of Eridu, served for enough SARS that he was 8 SARS. And it turned out to be 28,800 years. He served. That's not how long he lived.
How is it possible to live that long on this planet?
Well, that's the question. How is it, or do we have any evidence that DNA, genetics on this planet could live to infinity if it weren't destroyed? Do we have any evidence of that in animal or plant kingdom? Do you know?
I heard that there's one, like really deep in the sea, Black Sea, octopus that it can live forever, and it just regenerates itself.
Well, there probably,
I don't know if it's true.
There probably are evidence of that, but there are also evidence in the plant kingdom that certain plant species, unless they're destroyed, their genetics allow them to live forever. So, you know, like giant sequoias, I think, in the redwoods, I think they have that, where they don't die unless a storm kills them, you know. So the question comes down, do we think it's possible that an alien could live for a really long time, much longer than us? I think that's possible, but how long? What's the limit? You know, is it the limit we see on Jupiter ascending, where they can take an elixir and renew their life? So now you're talking about, do we have anything that could impact our telomeres so they don't decay, so we could live forever? And this is really popular among globalists and elitists who have nothing else to think about except preserving the amount of time they have in this experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Like
So,
humanity is now trying to, with this transhumanism and with all these projects that are ongoing, you know, to achieve immortality.
exactly. Yeah. So is it possible? I think it is possible. Would you want to stay around in this order of reality, in the system that we have right now, seeing what you've seen and knowing what you know? I don't think I would. It reminds me of that movie, Mr. Nobody. You know? In the movie Mr. Nobody, where there was only one guy that could die and everybody else had their telomeres fixed, and they never died. Yeah.
Or like Highlander.
Yeah. So trip out on that. So I think there's still factions among us. They come, they go. It may be harvest time, and they come and have a little celebration over this or that. We don't really know, but I think there's a lot of species that come and go on this planet that we don't have any interactions with, because they've chosen not to interact with us. But I see the Anunnaki, though, as very ingrained in our complete reality. As a matter of fact, I even put them on the front of my book as being responsible for setting up the New World Order constructs and mandating what mankind has been doing for the last, hundreds of years to bring about what we call a New World Order. And I think that's completely coming from the Anunnaki. So, you want to skip down number 4 and talk about religions?
Yeah, actually, we can go to religion, and there are 3 major religions today, like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they are all Abrahamic religions. And in a Genesis creation story, and Genesis creation story seems pretty much similar to Sumerian records, which is thousands of years has been written earlier in clay tablets.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that? How are these all religions just a copy of all of them, or just some stories, myths?
So that's a great question. So I started out talking to you about, I was caught up in the Baptist religion in the Bible Belt in the Midwest of the United States. Surprised, right? It's still going on there, by the way. And you brought up the term Abrahamic. I'm going to do something here real quick. I'm probably going to mess up my camera and my mic, but I've got a book underneath here that I'm using to stack it up. Okay, I'm going to pull it out because I want to show it to you.
Yeah.
So it's going to change the thing. Hopefully it won't pop or fall over. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay, so I cued in on, all right, just like you, all these religions seem to have come from, the Abrahamic tradition, right? Abraham. Who's Abraham? Who's Abram?
Yeah. Why God changed his name then?
Yeah. Why? Well, why does the religion of Islam pray to him too? They do. They include him. Why?
And they have Jesus as a prophet.
Yeah.
Which is many times more mentioned in Quran,
yeah.
in the Holy Quran.
And at the same time, Judaism, who takes credit for the Hebrew text and all that, they barely even give Jesus the right of being a prophet. They're like,
of course,
they view him as complete trash. So it's like, wow, everybody views Israel as this holy land where we want to go worship Jesus, and all the Christians go over there. Did they not know that Judaism views Jesus as absolutely not the savior? And what are they doing? Just milking their money because they think they're idiots? I mean, what is that all about? Anyway, so
I have so many questions.
I know. So I asked myself the question about who is Abraham? Who's Abraham? Okay. So I took the time to go read up a little bit after I had the Sumerian kings list in my hand and going, where did he come from? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out he's in the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. And Sumer is where he's from. Like, wait, Abram is a Sumerian? Right? Try telling that to people in Bible study in the Midwest. They're like, well, I don't know what that means. He was a Sumerian, okay? And so you dig a little farther and you find out, okay, his whole family lived there too. And his dad was kind of important, right? Turned out to be the chief priest for the main deity in the Ziggurat temple in Ur. Okay, as a person who was raised in the Protestant thing, okay, here, and believing that God was the God who was described in the Bible, like everyone else was lied to believe, okay? All of a sudden I find out, what? Abram is this God's chief priest. And he's having interactions with him every day. He's clothing him, he's bringing him food, he's carrying out his orders. As a matter of fact, Abram looks like this down in this, I'm talking about Terah, his father. Okay? He was his chief priest. Well, Abram turned out to be getting orders eventually. He turns out to be treated as a military general. He's like a highfalutin prince who's born into, some regal family who ends up being ordered to go on conquest, like that. He goes down to Egypt and gathers camels and armament, chariots, I believe, even horses for battle later in the discussion. I'm like, who is this guy, Abram the general? We view him as a patriarch of three religions. He was a military general for this deity in the city of Ur. It gets better, okay, as you dig further. So you're like, okay, all of a sudden, we see in the Bible Ur of the Chaldees, right, where Abram is from. So there's a verification that Abram is from there. Well, he's got brothers and sisters there as well. And one of them is Haran, and the other one is named Lot. So we know the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, right? All that. So all of a sudden it gets kind of deep. You want to know about Abram getting a name change, okay? So about, and this all led up to my head spinning, Ian. I got to explain that part first. I'm in the city of Ur. I found out who Abram was. He wasn't anything that I thought he was. And all of a sudden now I see why he's the venerated patriarch of, I see why, of Islam, because in the city of Ur was Nanar's temple. He's the son of Enlil, who was the chief deity. And he's the moon god who has a following that's just huge at this time. As a matter of fact, they said he had a following that was as large as ewes, meaning baby sheep. You know, he just got them everywhere. The moon god, Nanar Sin. Okay. Well, it turns out that he ends up being the second dynasty ruler of that very city of Uruk, where Gilgamesh was king, just a little bit later. So he's a big player. So now we got Abram, we got Haran, we got Lot, we got Terah, and we got this mysterious God. Okay, but let's bring him into the picture now. This God that eventually, if you look at the Hebrew records, became the God of Israel. Am I right? And that God was Yahweh. Okay. So all of a sudden, we have another name for this being who Terah is serving. And if you read the Lamentations of Ur, you will find out who that deity is. Okay. And that deity was Enlil. And he was interacting on the council with his father, Anu, dealing with the issues in Mesopotamia relative to kingship, the command, getting the gold, the bonds, heaven, earth, constructs in order to communicate back, coordinate transportation of raw materials and processing, all that. So he was right in the middle of the stuff, okay? So when you find out who Abram was, yeah, he's important, but he only exposes the fact that the Anunnaki gods that were occupying the ziggurat temples in Sumer were very real. These weren't concepts. These were real flesh and blood beings that liked really fine garments. They liked cedar doors taken from Lebanon, built huge ziggurat temples. These beings were full on, okay? So,
and they needed blood sacrifice.
Well, let's talk about, so now I kind of exposed you who God was to Abram and his father. Well, this was Enlil. Enlil, the Lord of the Command. He was Lord of the Earth. He was the highest ranking Anunnaki that was here relative to his brother Enki, okay, who had a temple at Eridu. That was his temple, but that was the only temple in Mesopotamia that was left. Okay, and you saw it was never rebuilt. Okay, he got a different terrain when they basically got their territories split up because they didn't really get along. So all of Africa ended up under Enki, and all of Mesopotamia belonged to Enlil. And then there's other issues. So let's talk about who we got covered. We got Yahweh, God, who was Enlil, head of the council, rank 50. Actually, the very highest rank is his father, Anu.
60.
So underneath him, you asked later, who was Allah, and who was the other one? Allah.
Actually, Jesus.
Jesus, okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to wait.
Okay, he said that he's coming back.
yeah, we're gonna have to wait a little bit on that one. That one gets complicated. We might do that in a second show. Okay, we might blow people out of the water with that one. But Allah turns out to be a name that he was called Allah in the Atrahasis Sumerian account as the rebel god who led the Ajiji miners against his father that revolted. Allah. Well, it turns out it's Nanar Sin who's his son. So yeah, how you like that? So look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. You've got Islam railing against Judaism, right? In the Gaza Strip and West Bank, you can see where they're clashing. Well, this is father and son controllers with their offspring fighting. Okay, so let's go back to the Levant when Enlil, Yahweh, told Abram to leave their area, occupy the Holy Land, and in the process sacrifice his son Jacob, right? For blood sacrifice.
One other question. Why did they have to sacrifice all the time? Blood sacrifices and slaying children. I don't understand that. What's behind that?
It's a very good question. You could say it's a megalomaniac position of saying that you can't serve me unless you show me the degree with which you're dedicated to me, so you don't turn on me. That means even sacrificing your firstborn kid to me. That's one way to look at it, okay? I think there's another way to look at it, in that the Anunnaki aren't operating here alone. Okay, they're in alliance with other races, and some of those other races do some of their dirty work. Okay, like the Greys do some of the abducting and things like that, right? And then
so they need loyalty.
Yeah, and some of these beings that were brought in are not supposed to be in this dimension, and they require chemicals from human blood in order to stay in this dimension. Just the bottom line. So I think if any of them are in affiliation with the Draco, which apparently they're occupying space on rocks in Alpha Draconis, and we've seen pictures of the Draco interacting with the Maya and several other species or others on this planet. So I do believe the Draco are here. They've been reported by the CIA in their documents to be here in the threat briefing report. And they and the Greys both require apparently some version of human blood in order to stay active in this dimension, because I don't know exactly why that's the case, but that seems to be the case. So I think Marduk, we got to talk about Marduk, okay? Marduk is Enki's
son.
He's Marduk is Enki's firstborn son. He had no business being in Mesopotamia. Okay, he decided to go there to be the avenger of his father, according to him, and basically go to war with Enlil and try to take him down so that he became the Lord of the Command. That's really what he was up to. Okay, so he occupied Babylon. So all the wars between Babylon and Jerusalem, where Enlil eventually moved, okay, he was at Nippur, Ur-Nippur area with mission control for a very long time. That's where they were running the space facilities, okay, Enlil. And he didn't want anybody else involved in the space facilities, especially not his brother Enki, and definitely not Marduk, okay? Because you could view them as trying to get in on where the money changes hands so they could get their cut and establish control and work their way in to be the extortionist gold agent on planet Earth back on the Nibiru or just whatever, you know? So, I'm getting kind of out of sequence with you, but we gotta bring up the idea that Marduk was in the play here, because he plays an important role. By the way, this sacrificing thing, let's put this to rest. Not only was Enlil Yahweh doing it in the Old Testament, okay, and all through the book, okay, so his hands are filthy with blood sacrifice. As a matter of fact, Mauro Bolina and I see Yahweh, this one, is one of the worst serial genocidal murderers on this planet. The fact that he was willing to sacrifice all of us with a flood by lying to the people in the first place lets you know what kind of being you're dealing with here. Okay, he doesn't care about hybrid experiments, all right, or intelligence or progression of consciousness or any of that.
He's just like a warrior or
pretty much, yeah, functional, you know. And there's too many resources over here. There are not enough resources there, and there's too many of you. You got to be eliminated. And it's very severe, and it has been that way all through history. So, so Marduk turns out to be a very tricky dude. Anunnaki are going head to head in Mesopotamia over and over, the wars of gods and men. People from Jerusalem being taken captive and held for very generations, right, over in Babylon. Okay, this happened. And eventually, I see Marduk as having infiltrated Israel, and not only overtaken the Torah Jews and threw them out, because he brought his Babylonian Talmud in and made it preeminent with the current hierarchy that's running Israel, okay, the slave state of Israel. So Marduk has really asserted himself, and he's present here in the world. I see him acting present among us. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Marduk wasn't behind the coronavirus with his Illuminati New World Order. Yeah. Just so you know.
And all these pandemic diseases and all that was happening in the history of mankind.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Who is standing behind all that? Because it just comes from nowhere.
Well, we saw Enlil willing to use diseases to cull the population in the Atrahasis. He wanted everybody wiped out if he couldn't get a flood, and he tried it, right? So, so these beings are perfectly willing to create it. So I titled my book, The Anunnaki of NWO, Mankind's Forgotten Creators. Yeah, we forgot about that they hybridized us. Enslavers. We didn't know that they created us to put us in a gold mine to replace somebody who was already slaving away. And we apparently worked those gold mines for a very long time. We have evidence of that, okay? Destroyers, whenever it wasn't convenient for them or we exceeded the resources, they were perfectly willing to destroy us. And you saw that in the Afterhasis. As a matter of fact, after the flood, the true Noah's flood, and we probably want to talk about that one. There was hardly any. There was only a small family of people left, and they wouldn't have been left had one of the Anunnaki not stepped in and made sure of it. Okay, so
that was Enki.
Yeah. So we got the destroyers, saviors. They left construct. Well, they saved that family, right? So the genetic species would still be on the planet. Otherwise, who's going to grow the food? That's what they said. Like, who's gonna do all this manual labor stuff? You get rid of all of them. And well, come on. Are the gods gonna do all the work again? The Gigi already revolted and we gave them relief. You're gonna put them back to work again? Like that, you know? So, and then the last part of the title was, and hidden architects of the New World Order. This New World Order that is rolling out right before your eyes right now, the Anunnaki have been behind it from the very beginning, in order to prevent probably their warring factions from getting into wars with each other again. One of them just wanted to control the entire thing, like the movie Jupiter Ascending. Remember the Abraxas family? And only one of them said, no, that's my planet. Right there. Right there. And if you push me really hard, guess what? I'll harvest it tomorrow, right? Well, look at this planet. It's full of people, 7 billion. And because of what they've done with their diets and such, I can look around a lot of industrial countries and go, the whole country's ripe, ready, like fattened pigs ready to be harvested. Anyway, I'm getting off track, but
yeah. Enki and Enlil are still in this endless war between. But how can you recognize which work is which?
That's a very good question. By the fruits of their spirits, you will know them. So the ones that are working for darkness are going to have fruit that's dark, okay? Look at all the outcomes of, look how China has managed its people with the social credit scores, blah, 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 blah. Do you see any light in that culture and how the oppressive regime has treated people like with no individual rights or freedom? So whenever you see that there's a disavowing with the avatar, us, has a right to life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, they're probably on the team that wants to destroy you, okay? So how do you know? It's another good, their symbols. Their symbols have not been hidden. They've kept their symbols very out and in the open. They're, ever since they adopted them, and you mentioned one of them, I'll mention a few others for you. We have the trident with Enki. We have the lightning bolt with Enlil and the eagle. We have the caduceus with Ningshita Thoth, who's Enki's second-born son, who was the scientist, not like Marduk, who was the warrior. Even though Marduk's brilliant, don't get me wrong.
But was he Ningshita part of our creation?
Yes, he was actually in the early stories. Apparently, because of his genetic capabilities, he's the one that augmented us to overcome the fact that we couldn't procreate. It's like a mule when you mix a horse and a donkey, you end up with a mule and it can't procreate. It becomes impotent. Well, he apparently overcame that problem in us, such that we could meet the workforce requirements as intended.
Do you think that, let me mention just Mauro Bellino, he said that there has been no sin in the Old Testament. Do you think that is true? Because I think, there was a sin, if God created Adam and Eve, or Adamites, a group of people, and then maybe they became self-aware and just by being self-aware after, you know, eating from the tree of knowledge, then they actually committed a sin, and that's why they were.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, I think that if you could do it, you could do it better than me.
Number one, choosing to take an indigenous species off this planet, interceding in its evolutionary path, hybridizing it to enslave it, that's a sin. That right there is a sin. Okay, that's messing with genetics they should have never done.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking into account gravity correctly so that our bipedal structures can operate easily in the gravity, and it takes us a year to learn to walk as babies and all that crap. That's a sin. That's a genetic error on the behalf of the Anunnaki. So the idea that they tried to turn it on us while we're in a situation, by the way, that whole scene took place with Enki and Enlil in Eridu in the Garden of Eden. That was one of their words, okay, where they were basically bringing two of the hybrids together to see if they could actually produce a baby. Right after I just described to you, they had to have a genetic upgrade with Ningshita because they couldn't procreate. So they're watching them, okay? This time they're watching them. Are they going to be able to procreate? Is there going to be baby making? And in this particular instance, we're talking about Enki and Enlil there, okay? The highest level members, you know, because this is Enki City, by the way. That's where the genetics went on with his sister Nin Herzog, who was the medical officer who had set up shop in Sharupak, the same city where Atrahasis, Noah was the king in the Bible, remember? So you asked me later in one of these questions, was Atrahasis the same as Zeusudra and Noah? He absolutely was. And then we find out that he was the son of Enki and Batanash, okay, in another story where this child, this king of Sharupak was not an ordinary king, okay? He was special because he was the son of Enki, okay? And Gilgamesh knew this too, by the way. It's part of the reason Gilgamesh went out to find this guy. He's like, hey, you might have some secrets I need to know about longevity, yeah. So in that city with the Eridu, in that garden, we've got these two hybrids that are procreating, and now Enki and Enlil in this famous garden scene in Genesis, they're talking about whether they had done anything to sin to cause their lot. That's so ridiculous. Do you see that now, Ian? They're sitting there going, hey, are they going to hurry up and have a baby that we can make a slave? Is this going to work out? Otherwise, we got to tell those of Gigi they got to go back to work. I mean, come on. So in the story, and I actually included this entire scene integrated into my Odyssey Key screenplay so people could understand what was really going on in that garden that had nothing to do with the Genesis account, which was written as a lie. So if you were to be born as a free will being and they could not take choice away from you because of how they fashioned you, which I still believe is true today, and you were given the choice to know something or not know something. And the consequence is, if you choose to know something, then you'll be banished from the garden and you'll surely die. That's what it says. Okay? That's what Enlil told the beings, because he didn't want them to have the consciousness of anything other but a slave. This is about the battle of the evolution of human consciousness and the early decision of what Anchor created with these primitive workers. Enlil probably was very concerned. How long can they live? How much can they lift? How much gold can they produce? How do you give them instructions? How do you guarantee they're not going to revolt and surround my house like those Ajiji did? You know, I'm still really pissed about that. Like that. You know, he probably wanted to know that. And several of the aspects of the hybridization process were probably not visible to Enlil because Enki was off doing it with his half-sister, Nin Herzog, down in Africa, where they were gathering genetic samples, trying all kinds of different things. So when he finally ended up creating a hybrid that used his own DNA, okay, and a Neanderthal, and just limited its lifespan, but gave it intelligence, he probably creeped Enlil out big time because he knew the intelligence part was really important, because you give them intelligence, what are they capable of? So now they're in this garden, and one of them has been told about the knowledge of supposed good and evil. And I think all of this is very symbolic, okay? It has to do with choosing to know whether you're enslaved or not. It's like whether you want to stick your head in the sand or you want to go, no, I'm not going to make any waves. I'm going to go along, get along, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you were told, you, Ian, were told, if you eat or read this, that A, you'll surely die, and B, then I'm going to banish your ass out of here because I don't ever want to see you again because you know something you're not supposed to know. And you still did it. What does that say about the being?
Well, it says a lot, you know.
It says they value the truth and freedom of choice over threats and manipulation. Yeah, that's what was going on in the garden. And so the idea of choosing to know that you're enslaved, this is like taking the red pill or the blue pill in the Matrix, right? So it's very symbolic. And I think there was no original sin. The only sin that happened was the Anunnaki did it to us in the grand scheme of things. And I think they tried to make up for that by leaving electrical conduits in us so that we could still reconnect back to the source of all, where our energy came from, where their energy came from as a reward. I don't even know if Neanderthal had chakras. I wish I did, you know. But if they did, they didn't take them out. Either way, we ended up with an electrical interface where we can rediscover that by taking the red pill over the blue pill, by making that same choice and choosing consciousness, that we can wake up and realize that we were enslaved, that we are a hybrid species. This is very uncomfortable stuff to know, but you've got to know where you came from if you want to know where you're going. And where you're going is back to where you were intended, which is returning to the source of life, the source of all. And that's who we are. And that's the only really, really great news about this whole Anunnaki story to me.
As you mentioned, Neanderthals, yeah, like 450,000 years ago, they started to spread all around the Europe, yeah, and they were Denisovans, yeah, as well.
Denisovians, and they were actually, they actually categorized the Denisovans as either a category of Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon, but yeah, it's about that period. So they were. Go ahead.
Do you think that Anunnaki had something with them? Because later on, like I don't know how many thousands years, when human emerged on the scene, we were interbreeding with them.
Yeah. So here, how long have the alien astronauts, whether they're Anunnaki or other ones, how long have they been playing genetic games with the indigenous species on this planet? We have no idea. It could go back millions of years for all we know. And that the bipedal hominids that we found, even before the Denisovians, all the way back to Australopithecus afarensis, who was Lucy in the Rift Valley of Africa. Well, they think that was 3.5 million years ago when they showed evidence of bipedalism.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, did an alien race have anything to do with spawning that? We have no idea with genetic experiments. So, yeah, so it's a good question. All we can do is pick up where the Sumerians told us that, well, the Anunnaki were our gods and they were doing this and down in South Africa, and we serve them with all that we do, and we have no problem with that. We wake up as slaves in this system and we find this out, and now we're like freaked about it, right? And we have mother and father issues because we don't know where we came from and blah, blah, blah as a species. And we don't feel very stable as a species, in my opinion, because we have progenitors that have wiped us out more than probably one time, as in the days of Noah, when it was intentionally done. You can read the Atrahasis yourself. It's frightening. Yeah. It's frightening. And then they just chose, well, we're just going to save this one family because, Enki decided that he was his kid and he was going to save them to be the food growers to later on, whatever. But it's no wonder that any other race that Enlil might be behind with his hybrid program would be against the race that Enki created, which would be the Noah line. So I think there's a whole battle between those two lineages that's going on that you probably don't even know about.
My question is, whenever you in the Western world mention aliens and abductions and all that, people don't believe that. But if you travel into the East, it's like a common thing. Everybody knows that, and everybody's okay with that. And if you look further back in history, people were writing about this, like here in clay tablets. It wasn't something that they made up.
No,
So
actually.
why is this knowledge in Western world suppressed? I don't understand that.
Well, I think because the three-letter agencies got involved way back early in the 1920s, 30s, decided to add to the cultural programming of the populace that if anybody reports a UFO, they're kind of nut job, so they predispositioned anybody that would report on it to look crazy, okay? And so they've been trying to hide the information because the reality is the United States, Washington, D.C. area has been chosen as a headquarters for the rollout of the New World Order. It's embedded in the streets, okay, in symbology. And we've known this from Francis Bacon since about the 1700s, that that's what they were up to. So the idea that it's happening now in such a big way shouldn't surprise people. But yeah, it's been like this slow motion thing that people don't, it's like the boiling frog syndrome. They won't get out of the water when you do it slow enough.
Do you think there's still enough gold, or did Anunnaki dig everything and it went?
I don't think there would ever be enough gold if you had to keep repeating the process each time you came perihelion. If your atmosphere would get disturbed and part of the ionosphere get stripped away or whatever. So I don't think there would ever be enough to satisfy that. I think the smartest thing would have been for them to realize that it's inevitably not going to happen. And as a matter of fact, I think that's part of the reason they ended up here is because they realized that it wasn't sustainable to keep the atmosphere like that. As a matter of fact, they probably, in the long run, I would say they're going to let that planet die. They really don't have a choice. Otherwise, they got to continue this ridiculous gathering resources to try to keep the atmosphere when they've got so much ability to move to other places, So that's just my opinion.
Oops, I had to make it. I have another question. All these religious texts are describing Ezekiel, Enoch, and Elijah. And when you're reading these scriptures, you can clearly see that this cannot be something metaphorically all the day, just imagine something, or they dreamed about. They're actually describing how they've been abducted.
Yeah. Oh.
So what's your take on that?
Well, is my microphone too far away? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear clear, loud and clear.
I just leaned back a little bit. I really should sit closer to it. Actually, just so people that say I have a bad microphone, this is what my microphone sounds like when I'm up close to it, and it sounds better.
It's very deep.
I know. So anyway, I like to have the freedom to move around a bit. Actually, having the lapel mic is probably the best thing. But anyway.
That's right. Your voice is perfect.
Oh, ask me that question one more time. I got distracted.
Okay. All religious texts. They were describing Ezekiel, Enoch, and Elijah. How they, I don't know, even Jesus, how they ascended into heaven.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, in my research, I found out that Jesus had many names. I'm going to go ahead and just lay it out for you now.
Okay.
There were many stories of the dying rising God ritual done in 3 days in order to tell this story of the astrological cycle of the sun that happens in the winter solstice. They adopted that long ago in pagan rituals, and Jesus even was still using it. Okay. Now, my research says Jesus was born in the Levant By the time he was 13, somehow somebody got a hold of him and lured him over to Pakistan and India, where he spent the next 20-something years becoming one of the best Kriya yoga practitioners in the region. And he was famous in that area. He ascended so fast in the ranks, they used to call him Isa. That was his name there. And as a matter of fact, his grave is still in Kashmir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen it, yeah.
The government of Kashmir did a special on Isa.
Mhm.
And I truly believe this avatar, whoever it was, had the spirit of Ningshita in him that was working on behalf of his father, Enki, that sent him there from Africa. Now remember, the mystery schools were down in Africa, in Enki's region, right? The 12 mystery schools under Thoth. So it's hard for us to understand that we think the Egyptian civilization only came up 3100 BC and that Sumer was older at 38. Well, we have evidence that the Egyptian civilization was the remnants of Atlantis that was set up 50,000 or more years previously by the orders of Poseidon Enki, who was an Anunnaki, the same one we're talking about, who told his son to go establish the rituals and the rites of basically transforming barbarians into light, like they were here to do, in the land of Chem, which is Egypt. So that was his son Thoth. So Thoth was there a long time before, okay, and back and forth with Sumer. Okay, so there was a lot. Go ahead.
Thoth was Ningishida then.
That's
Ningshida.
right. That's right.
Okay.
That's
and
right.
Ningshida built Atlantis.
Well, he was involved there, but he also was given credit for building the Giza complex. And the Sphinx originally had his face on it, according to him. That Sphinx, by the way, if you look at the disclosures of the pyramids, and there's a link on one of the YouTube videos that I shared. It does a very good job tying in the solar micronova that we talk about from the Dialog Institute, encapsulated in the timing of what was going on in Egypt to point to the exact date when that happens. Okay, so there was ascension timing built into the Sphinx orientation with the Giza, and it's all part of Ningshita Thoth's role. Well, what I want to get to without losing you here, he had many names.
Just to mention, they say that there are still emerald tablets of Thoth under the Sphinx.
That's what they say. Yeah. Well, he was given credit for writing 35,000 books. Okay, and one of the names he went by was Hermes. Okay, so we have Hermes, Mercury, Ningshita. All three of them, let's just stick with those right now, carried a symbol to identify them. You know what it was, right? What symbol did he carry to identify himself? His dad had the trident. Which one did Ningshita Thoth have?
Caduceus?
The Caduceus. Very famous symbol. It's all over the world, all over the medical industry. Most people have no idea why. And maybe real quickly, I should describe what that means, because it represents his mission given to him on this planet relative to us. And that was to raise our consciousness. So I always saw the Garden of Eden as a battle of the evolution of human consciousness. Enlil wanted slaves, no high consciousness. There's no room on the council for you. Don't even think about it, right? And then Enki, who probably realized that what he did to hybridize these species was probably not, in the big scheme of things, probably not the best thing to do. Okay, and because it kind of goes against free will, you know, limiting genetics like that. You're creating a slave species. Anyway.
Just who built, okay, now I think that we know that Thoth built Egyptian pyramids.
Well,
But
I'm saying that because that's what he says in the history of Atlantis. And if you time it based on what he said, then it was about 34,000 years ago that the pyramid was built in the age of Leo, right? The Sphinx is a lion, Leo, made sense to me. But you got to wind the zodiac back twice. in the procession. And, you know,
Because one procession is
25,920.
Yeah.
So if you take 72 degrees and multiply it by 360,
Yeah.
72 years is 1 degree of precession. So multiply that by 360 degrees and you get a full 25,920.
Mm-hmm.
That's called a great year, okay? You got to go back 2 of those basically from where we are right now to get approximately where we're talking about here, 50,000 years ago. Well, at 34,000 years ago, that's what if I had money to bet, I would bet on Thoth that's what he said. And Robert Anthony West and everybody thinks it's over in 10,000. Great. But Thoth tells you right there, I built these, and it's 35. All you had to do was take the time he said when he left Egypt and the time he said he ruled, which was 16,000 years, by the way, when he went into stasis, meaning he had to go fix his energy body, right, for 100 years in the halls of Amenti. That's what he said. And he has to do this every 1,000 years. Every 1,000 years, 100 of those years, he's got to renew his body.
So was he renewing his body in a pyramid? Or?
Well, he apparently does it in the halls of Amenti using the frequencies that come off of the flower of life.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he wrote. Okay, I'm just repeating what he said. So take 16,000 years off of 50,000, you get to 34,000. Put that into the calendar, and you can see. I did this. I made a zodiacal calendar showing where I think the Giza complex was built and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's more to that story than just when it was built, because it also encodes the solar dynamo, okay, that has to do with our ascension and micronova every 12,000 years in there as well. So I thought that was fascinating. I'll give you a link when I find it to that. So, so where are we at? How does that tie into Jesus? From the region down south, where Enki and his son were promoting human consciousness and trying to take people from barbarians to the light, just the opposite was happening up in Mesopotamia. Enlil was bringing them up, you know, using them as a slave force. And this is where we have that famous council meeting where after 600 years of this, okay, slave program where he ordered the flood, because they were drinking out of the puddles butt naked like animals in front of his temple. And he didn't like that. And they were making all kinds of noise. Maybe they were procreating really loud and he didn't like that either. Whatever, he said they were bellowing like bulls. And that's when he called the council meeting, the Anunnaki council meeting, to get rid of them back in history, in the Atrahasis, okay? So we're back forward now in the Levant. We've got the Roman Empire occupying that region, and Jerusalem is just part of that occupation, right? And so suddenly a being is sent in who's there to not teach them about Judaism at all. There is nothing that Jesus taught that was about Judaism. What he was teaching about was the kingdom within, what he learned as a Kriya Buddhist, deep meditative master in Tibet and Kashmir, and came back and shared it with them. Now, why did he do that? I think his dad told him to. He was sent there as an infiltration agent, a Trojan horse, to raise consciousness in the region right where his half-brother Enlil had decided, no, you're going to be nothing but dirt slaves for me. Okay, this is a battle over the evolution of consciousness. And Nishida Thoth played that role multiple times. He didn't do it just once. Okay, that's just one example of what he did in the Levant, and we called that the story of Jesus. Okay, so I hope that helps. He went by many names. Let me just give you some of them. And this is in accordance with Edgar Casey as well, who has an entire table of the incarnations of Jesus listed on the internet that has had a lot of views. I know it has. So the idea that the king of Salem was also Nishida, it turns out that's true. Okay, and you can read the book The Alchemist and find this out. Melchizedek, Thoth, Thoth in Egypt and also Thoth in Atlantis, right? He went by Tahuti in Egypt a couple of times. Actually, he goes by Thoth. It's Thoth, but they pronounce it Thoth. I've been bad about doing that. I find that harder to leave the H out. I know. What other names do we have? Enoch was another name for Thoth. So when he talked about ascending to the heavens and learning about all the cycles of the planets, the Kali Yuga cycle, possibly the solar cycles that have to do with the 11-year minimum, the iceberg cycle, and then this micronova. All of our weather and big things happen based on wobbles in the galaxy. These are cycles. And he says, as Enoch in the Bible, when he ascended to heaven and was shown all of these cycles, it's the exact same story he tells in the Emerald Tablets. So I see that as coincident, and part of his becoming a member of the, I don't know, the circle of light inside of the halls of Amente, where the cycle masters rule it all. He's one of them. He's not even, I don't even think they consider him part Anunnaki anymore, because he totally gave himself over to the light force and the domain to facilitate our evolution of consciousness. So I really respect Thoth for that. And I believe his father is just as benevolent, even though he's got a much harder role.
One more question about the Jesus.
Okay.
Why do you think that God sacrificed him as the only beloved son?
Well, first of all, I don't believe any of that verbiage.
Okay.
I believe Ningshita is Enki's son. Okay, so when you want to talk about the father and son, what about the father that gave us part of the genetics that created us locally? Does that mean he's God? No, that means he's a genetic ancient astronaut who is the Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein to us. He shared some genetics with us. That doesn't make him the creator of all, okay? But I think he shares a spirit with the original source to the creator of all with us. And we call that the Ba energy that shows up in the Egyptian writings about your Ba and your Ka, okay? You're made up of two energies, and one of them is eternal and one of them is for creating an illusion of the material world to your good slave. Enki has that and we have that. We share that with them, okay? Did I answer your question?
You have answered many questions.
I get lost. I know, I'm looking at the list over here going, did I answer your question?
We talk a lot.
We didn't talk about the Caduceus enough. We left that off. It's very important to understand Ningshita's role relative to what that is. So we have this agent sent from the Egyptian mystery schools, sent up into the Levant to wake people up, and this is the Bible story, right? It was severely perverted. Enlil's version of a symbol is the cross. I'm going to crucify your carcass if you think you're going to play God around me, right? You think you have a godlike consciousness where you can be an instance of the creator of all, Jesus, like you're saying? I'll put you on one of those things and take the life out of you. Whereas he's carrying a symbol, Ningshita, Thoth, which looks like a cross, right? It's a vertical post with wings coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite meaning of this one is, if I can, the twin serpents represent your Ida and Pingala Nadi. The central post represents your spine, an electrical construct, like an antenna, a conductor. The Ida and Pingala Nadi nervous system represent your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system that reconnect inside your nose, which is the positive pole of your energy body. Where they come from, where the tails of the serpents are located, is it's the ganglion of impars, the negative most pole of your energy body, kind of like a battery. Negative sign down there, positive sign up here. The intersection of the Ida and Pingala Nadi in your spinopalatine ganglia are part of the stimulus loop that creates perception and awareness and consciousness, okay? These need to be operational and balanced in order to balance your energy. If you're very injured, your autonomic nervous system owns a whole bunch of your body and you're mostly asleep. If your sympathetic nervous system is truly able to sense the state of something and use it, you're more alive. Okay, and that's all I can say about this. This is where structural integration comes in. Okay, so from there, those twin serpents come together and they're pointing together like this, right? Inside your brain, where the sushumna, the spinal cord, comes up, that's your central nervous system conductor where all your chakras are aligned on that. Okay, so as it makes it to the higher chakras inside your head, you have your third eye here, which is your pituitary gland, and then higher up inside your brain, deep inside, is your pineal gland, the last two glands that are affiliated with your electrical connections, which are your chakras. Okay, so the wings coming out of the caduceus represent the lateral ventricles of your brain. When the corpus callosum is joined and you've had a hemisync experience where your left and right brain are now operating as one. They normally don't, they're disjoint. It has to do with the balance of your energy until you get it all the way up, okay, where it's activating the pineal gland. When it starts activating the pineal gland, you have the opportunity to produce the wings of Hermes. That's what those are, okay? The little knob on top of the post represents your pineal gland, okay? So that entire symbol represents taking you from your lower chakra with a Kundalini experience, waking up the latent energy in your ganglion of Impar, of your negative pole, it moving up through the Ida and Pingala nadis and the Sushumna. There's a circulation there in your energy. And finally, when it's operational, you get the wings of Hermes and you become a very different being, because now you're connected to universal consciousness, which is what Pa was sent here to do, is connect you to that.
So what is then energy and what is soul? And what happens when a body dies?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna get all those questions in there, aren't you?
I don't know.
All right, let's end on this part where we're talking about what that is, because in my book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, I wrote that book for people who said, well, if the Anunnaki created us, then who is God to them, and how does that apply to me? Okay, the real God, the real creator, who's that? And how does that affect my evolutionary path, independent of what they did, because they messed with my evolutionary path. Actually, we can be mad at the Anunnaki for doing that. Had they not done that, and we were still Neanderthal, we could be in for millions more years of evolution before we ever got to the place where we're having a conversation like this. So we can be mad at them for doing what they did. We wouldn't be here having this conversation had they not given us the intelligence and the gifts they gave us. So I'm grateful for that. And for all the Anunnaki that are listening to us every time we say their name, I truly am grateful for that, because they gave us a way to experience heaven on this prison planet that you wouldn't be able to do had they not left those things in there. Okay, so we got this Caduceus thing down. Are we good with that? Thoth represented the opposite of what Enlil wanted. So this may be by design, okay? So you got a duality construct, so you can say, well, there's the evolution of consciousness, what it looks like, a life of Jesus, perfect. I want to live like that. Or here's a walk after the flesh, and you can end up like Weinstein, who's in court right now with his little walker, having abused how many women, okay? Thinking that everyone else is a goyim, I'm elevated, I can do anything I want, and there's no karma. Okay, this is what's going on all over the world, by the way, with people who sign up to racism and believe that they're exempt from the universal laws that govern us all. Yeah. Let's talk about that energy. What is this energy that they've made available? There's a thing called universal consciousness, Ian. It can either take on form, which means material, or not take on form. Anywhere in the playground that the creator of all has created. That means this planet, some other planet. You can incarnate on this planet into a body. incarnate on another planet as a dragon, whatever, okay? It's just a form. But your energy is immortal. The energy inside you is eternal and it cannot be destroyed. This is a physics principle, by the way. Are you into physics? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only changes form or state. Okay, that's true for you as well.
Is this energy or soul somehow connected?
Is it connected to what?
I mean,
this energy,
when you die,
eternal.
Are you aware that
yes,
you have been
absolutely something? So let me just give you my perspective, okay? I can't prove this. My experience is that both intelligence and memory are permanent. They go with you. When you give up this meat, your permanent energy body is still going to remember everything that happened here. It's part of assimilating the lessons from the material simulator into your intelligence. Intelligence comes from the universal consciousness. Think of it as a frequency aggregated in a band where every time all of us die, all of those of us that you do go back and you're reconnected from where you came from. You're a thimble of water, you're a glass of water floating in the ocean. And as soon as the glass breaks, you just reintegrate back into the water. Okay, if we want to have form for you, we got to pour you back into an avatar body. Okay, and permanent energy changes avatar bodies like used cars. Okay, we view death as something scary because we don't understand it. It's nothing more than giving up an avatar body so that we can re-merge into universal consciousness. Birth and death are an illusion. What's permanent is your energy, and once you finally accept that and get good with that and experience that by chasing universal consciousness, that's what I want you to do.
But why, when we incarnate into this life, into this body that we are, why don't we remember our past lives?
Probably it has to do with learning lessons. There are astute masters who know how to preserve their consciousness at death, so that when they come into this experience, they have their full memory, if they decide to do it again, in order not to lose and have to start all over, okay? There are several documented cases of that. And as a matter of fact, in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth teaches you exactly how to do that at the end of your life, how to preserve your consciousness so you don't have to repeat, the karmic slave cycle because you didn't wake up. If you don't wake up and you basically die without finding universal consciousness, you're probably going to be reincarnated back into another body and repeat the process over and over and over. As a matter of fact, many of us have.
That is hell.
Go ahead.
That is hell.
That is hell. That's right. Yeah. So we're born into hell. In a slave system, we usually we do it because we've made the agreement that we're going to learn certain things that are going to progress us out of it. So this is a learning construct, and you can do it as many times as you want. Eventually, ultimately, you're predestined. You're gonna wake up. You're gonna evolve. You're gonna become enlightened. And it might take you several lifetimes, but that's the good news, And the thing is, I don't think there are certain special times, like great years, where there seems to be a window where everybody can wake up all at once without having to work as hard. And I think we're in one of those right now. That's what the Mayan calendar was counting down to.
Yeah, I think everybody's awakening slowly, yeah.
Do you see it? Do you see it? I think that's because of where we are, where our solar dynamo is in its process. It's what's waking people up. The sun regulates all life. All life, biological life, all life, your life. So if the sun changes frequency, it's going to change you. You see that? And the sun is changing. And that is a universal thing that we've discovered as scientists, is that there are things that happen in at least our little corner of the galaxy that are very, very cyclical, meaning you could run a clock by them, an atomic clock, practically. Okay? And one of those is do you know what a dynamo is? This is the magnetic
Yeah,
flux flow.
that makes
Positive, negative. You know, the sun's got a positive pole and a negative pole. Our planet has one. Our bodies have one. As above, so below, right down here.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we're all interconnected in this energy flow with the sun, and as part of that, I believe that's good. And I was talking with Jay Campbell at a show yesterday about it. I believe the sun does regulate our ascension cycles. So we talk about wanting to die and go to heaven, blah, 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 right? Well, guess what? You can die to your material form in meditation every day and experience the transcendent reality of universal consciousness. And that ought to be everybody's goal. Because as soon as you find that, you know it's all a rigged game, and this is just a joke. Because when you experience your universal consciousness, you know that's the real you, okay? Not the skewed perception that you created by filtering events through your limited sensors in an avatar body and created a reality in your brain and said, yeah, that's real, that's what everything is. What a lie. We have such a limited view of what really is going on with our sensors. And that in and of itself ought to destabilize every single person to know that if I can't even see as good as a dog, what are they seeing that I can't see? Okay, can they see an alien standing out there in my yard picking my cucumbers? Because I know somebody's doing it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, you get it. So, did we answer enough about human energy? And I want people to go into.
Well, we could still talk about it.
Oh, you could go for it. I want people to read what I wrote about what the creator of all said, how you're formed. It's like you were never given a Bible of how you were created and what you're capable of and blah, blah, blah. You weren't given a user's manual at birth, right?
Yeah.
You don't even know what you were capable of. You don't even know what features you had.
You just get conditioned.
That's right. Whereas the Emerald Tablets, actually in that discussion, he tells you what the creator of all gave to you, why you were a seeker in this life, because part of the aspect of your brain was given a connection to the creator of all. Your intelligence comes from the creator of all. So unless you get to the place where your intelligence recognizes that intelligence and says, oh, there's a creator of all, and I'm an instance of that. Until you get to that place, you haven't figured it out yet. So get to that place. And that place is universal consciousness. Okay? So we may need to do another show on that for people, but I highly encourage people to do that. Don't be afraid about coronavirus and all this other stuff. Seek out your connection to universal consciousness so you're not afraid of dying, and you know that this game of evolution of consciousness goes on a lot of different more times than just this one, okay? You got a lot of steps in becoming what you're capable of as a co-creator of the creator of all in this process. And that's what you are.
I think people are not actually aware. I mean, most of people are aware that what we are as a soul, as a being, and as a body as well. And do you think that
that's true? That's because of religions of what they've done. They've hijacked the people's responsibility for discovering the truth about who they are and where they came from. And people accept these lies because they're too lazy to and destabilize.
It's easier to give responsibility to something else.
Yes, that's true. And that's the majority of us. For some reason, most of us don't want to be responsible. We want to be entertained.
Do you think that human body can heal itself of all diseases?
For the most part, yes. Our DNA is constructed in a way, if it is given the capability of dealing with a normally occurring invader, yes. If we're going to talk about engineered things that can actually fool your DNA, possibly not. Okay. And we're getting to that clever kind of place right now as a species that we can do that. And it's very disturbing. You realize right now that the level of genetic engineering we can do, we can
No, we're
approximately.
actually doing a lot. We're doing on animals, we're doing on plants.
We have become the Anunnaki,
Yeah.
and we
We're
have
just
been.
like history repeats itself, so we
That's
are
right.
repeating something from them, you know.
That's right. That's right. So now we're faced with all the ethical issues
Mm.
of, well, if you create a species, what about its consciousness? How much am I responsible for caring for it? What if it goes wayward? You know, blah blah. There's a lot of issues. You know,
Do you
so
think that in the future, when we're gonna create these avatars like robots, we actually did, but when they're gonna become self-aware, free, do you think that there will be some war between us and them, like we see in the movies today?
I think that's happening now. I think those of
Mm.
us that are waking up from the enslavement, and listen, it took me a large part of my life to do that. I'm really surprised how long it took to break the God spell and break out of the matrix and go, oh my word, this is what's going on. I'm going to climb back in a hole and take the blue pill, right? It took me a long time, and I was trying. So it's not easy. It's not easy, and you can't wake somebody else up out of the matrix. So it's very hard. I'm not answering your question because I lost track of it.
Uh,
But
you were years ago. You were working, developing the artificial intelligence, and when you see now what is going on,
oh,
how do you feel about that?
well, I feel used because I was a really smart person, and I was used to put some of my intelligence into autonomous vehicles that basically gave it survival capabilities that humans would have, but a machine normally wouldn't
Mhm.
have. I don't feel good about that. I really don't. I was also tricked into building MPEG encoders and compressors for the high definition capabilities of video and audio on the Predator drone. I was told they were commercial programs, so when I found this out, I quit. And I want the people that are listening to me, because one of them was the ex-president of NASA, and his name was Dan Golden. You are a lying bastard, Dan, and I hope you get the karma you deserve for creating such a thing that could kill people remotely like a Predator drone. Okay, so the intelligence is being put into machines without man in the loop. Well, to them, man's in the loop because he's driving the joystick of the thing. But this is horrible stuff that's happening. And the latest thing I saw was, just so you know, and look, is robots like the ones from Boston Dynamics. They're asking, what are the ethical requirements for them, such that we can put one into a battlefield environment and turn them loose. I mean, this has gone all the way to the Terminator, right? So we don't want to lose human life in conflict, but now because of what's happened in our ability with artificial intelligence and such, they can create weapons that are full spectrum dominance, definitely, and that's already here. It's real. It's now. I, that's very disturbing. But if you go back in history, when the Anunnaki were arguing about meat versus tools in the gold mines, Enlil wanted tools and Enki chose biological meat. Maybe for expedition reasons, but there's a whole argument over biology versus tools. And right now, it looks to me like the Anunnaki have finally decided that humans are a lot of trouble, and they're replacing them in car factories with automation and robots. And I think eventually all manual labor that needs precision will, no human will be in the loop there.
Mhm.
That's what I think. So I think eventually humans will be involved in social activities and very limited, maybe spectacle theater, making movies to entertain the powers that be that are running the New World Order. But they're certainly not going to be in the main loop for resource gathering. That's what I think. Look at I just saw this article yesterday on an Australian company, one of the largest gold mines in the world, has now taken all their trucks and put robotic systems on them. So there's no humans
Mhm.
driving these trucks down there. So it's happening. Even in the
Well,
gold mines.
A new AGG workers.
Yeah, those are the new Gigi workers. Isn't that a full circle thing? All the way around? Well, look at the tunnel borers and things like that we have that can do kilometers underground, so big that 2 semi-trucks can drive next to each other. I mean, we're full on with the capabilities of being able to do mining on this planet now.
Can I just go back? I just remembered something. What are your thoughts on Nikola Tesla? And let's say even Werner von Braun, yeah, who was building this space program, NASA, and before in Germany, Nazi Germany. And when them two were asked, where did they get their information? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Werner von Braun, I don't know, he said something that from aliens.
Yeah.
But Nikola Tesla said from Akashic records, from outside somewhere. Yeah?
The Akashic record is very similar to what we call this channel of universal consciousness.
Yeah, so what is this?
Let's do Werner von Braun first. He was a rocket genius in Germany. They used him to build rockets for a war. He got really good at it. End of World War II, he was brought over as the chief scientist for our NASA program as part of the Paperclip program and Paperclip project. So I think he was exposed to the sign of the eagle, who was running Germany, that was trying to use eugenics and all this stuff to take over the world.
It's always eagle from Rome, Germany.
Yeah, that was more likely Enlil with some real skirmishes between Marduk. So I think Marduk and Enlil were both involved in that. And either one of them could have given Werner von Braun the rocket information, but I think it was more Enlil. The reason why, you come back to the United States in the 1950s, in my book, Seven Planet Mercury Rising, I gave you a table of the weapons programs that started right after Paperclip came here. And almost every one of them had to do with intercontinental or ballistic missiles that had a Greek god's name on them, and the majority of them had Zeus's name on them, and that was Enlil. So I believe he was the one that brought Werner von Braun over, said, yeah, you're going to be part of this program over here too. So just my my machinations. As far as Nikola Tesla goes, he discovered that energy moving through the planet, because of the capacitive nature of the cloud cover that surrounds and strikes the planet thousands of times a day, that basically there's a big capacitor between the core of the Earth and as you rise up to the cloud. So if you have an antenna that's sticking up, it's going to get more ionized toward the top as you leave the ground potential of the ground naturally because of this capacitance. Okay. The positive charge being on the ions of the cloud layers in our atmosphere, and the negative pole being in the Earth. So if you knew this and you were to put up little antennas, you could transmit, or you could have a DC energy between 2 points all the time. And if you knew how to circulate that through a coil, like what he was doing, you could produce electricity for free. We could still do that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there were antennas and constructs from Tesla all over buildings in Europe, and your part of the world too. Yeah, in old Europe, that used to be used, where they were using that energy, and then they got stripped out when the robber baron bankers came in and decided everybody was going to start paying for electricity, right?
Of course, yeah, nothing's for free.
That's right. So, so Nikola Tesla, I think he was probably, I don't know, maybe he meditated or something, but I think he got in touch with universal consciousness, and it made him a creative genius, just like Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, the same thing. They didn't write down ideas. They were just
Renaissance. They were Renaissance people. Yeah.
And it's interesting.
Okay. Is there anything else on your mind? Because I think my vocal cords have about had it for today. But
okay, I'm sorry.
No. What else is on your mind?
You know, but I could listen to you on and on and on. You know?
Well, I'm honored that you want to know, and you want to help those who want to help themselves.
Yeah.
In life, and so you can't. And by the way, you can't save anybody. You can't wake anybody up. All you can do is share your path.
That's it.
And let them decide what they want to do. But you don't even share it unless there's an interest there, because if nobody's interested, you wouldn't stand there and lecture them, right? That's casting your pearls to the swine. So it honors me when there are people like you that want to know the truth, because I'm willing to tell it. You know?
Well, yeah, I was
at least
always
according to what my map, and all I can tell is my map, what happened to me and what I discovered. You know, I discovered that all three religions were fake because of the relationship of the Anunnaki in the city of Ur. When I found out who Enlil really was, that was a head spinner for me. Okay, why people don't see that, I don't know. Read the Lamentations of Ur. I included it in my book, Seven Planet Mercury Rising, if you don't believe me. This is an original document talking about a father and his son right before he nukes his city for some reason and removes kingship from there. This is horrible stuff.
I mean, it's very obvious that there has been some nuclear weapon used, you know?
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. And that had a lot to do with why Marduk ended up in preeminence in the region.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you just a question real quick. You're seeing what's happening in the world right now. Are the Anunnaki bringing this to a Matrix reset, just like in the third version of the Matrix movie? Are we about to see our holographic simulation reset and a new version of primitive worker rolled out? Maybe they're going to be hybrids, maybe they're going to be robots, I don't know. But something's afoot, isn't it? We're this close to a nuclear clock going off, pandemics going off the world, locust plagues, economic collapse. You know, the whole world is falling apart, and it's not very supportive for avatars right now.
I think everything is, for the last 200 years, is changing rapidly. For the most part of like a couple of centuries, we were living in dark ages, yeah? And then suddenly 200 years ago with the industrial revolution, look, we have technology that we cannot even imagine, you know? So why is this happening so suddenly and so rapidly? That's unbelievable. Because we humans, we have always have the same brains and the same knowledge. So how come that just suddenly we became so much more intelligent, more smart?
I think it has to do with the location of our solar system relative to the galactic center. I say this every single time. And this goes back to the diagram from Swami Yukasar and Babaji in the book Holy Science that describes the wake up and go to sleep cycles for human consciousness. I just got a sign my internet is unstable, so we might have to finish up here. But we're in that place where the Mayans said we would experience universal consciousness as of around 2012, somewhere in there. Is that not what's happening, where we're discovering there's a big universe out there, there's other life out there, we're not alone, we're discovering universal consciousness, and not that we're not just meat, that we're energy and that we're eternal, and this is just a temporary experience. We're learning all that stuff in this space right now, and I think that is fantastic, because I'll tell you what, had I not discovered that, I can't imagine going on, seeing what I've seen in this planet. I think there are things going on this planet that us avatars were never meant to see in our evolutionary process path. What's going on right now?
Gerald, I really thank you for your time, and it has been really an honor to listen to you and having this conversation with you. And thank you for everything you're doing, because you're bringing a lot of light to the world, you know.
Well, I appreciate that, Ian. So let me end right there. Now, I hope all of the people that you share this with are bolstered and made into spiritual warriors that are unafraid to speak their truth. Because right now, that's what we need a lot of, is people speaking their truth, standing up and going, no, this is who I am, this is where I came from, and you can do this to me, but I'm an eternal being, and I'll die with honor. I won't die enslaved in your system. I'll die with honor, the way I was created by the Creator of all to live. And so you can live a more dignified life without fear once you do take that red pill. Okay, it's very uncomfortable to look at the truth of what's going on, but you have to do it, because hiding out from the truth just makes you a victim that's going to perpetuate that more for you. So, and with that said, Ian, how do you pronounce your last name? Bozic?
In my country, we say Bozic.
Bozic, okay.
We say in England.
Where can people find you? And then I'll tell people where they can find me. Do they find you on YouTube, Facebook? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, Ian Bozic, or they can find me on email, ianbozic@icloud.com,
Okay.
or maybe the Sunday Tribune. There are many ways. Yeah.
Okay. In the chat window, would you put your preferred ways for them to get in touch with you? So when I put the video up, we have a link for you. Okay. And with that said, thank you so much for taking the time. My voice actually got better during this interview, not worse. I have no idea why. I'm very happy about that. So blessings to you, and let's call it an end right there, and I'll stop the recording, okay?
Why is it important for parents to take responsibility for structure problems at birth? It's simple: to enable the child to grow into a body that has a great chance of finding a relationship with gravity before the lumps and bruises of our material lives start disordering the fascia further. Our most effective role as a parent is to notice and fan the potential flames of what inspires our kids so they can experience it fully. Try the hat on, if you will, for the potential roles they will play in the future. This is how to empower them to be what they came here to be. Is your baby a gravity body baby? We as parents do not know what the child's future holds, so the more we can do to remove hindrances to an optimal experience, the better. Addressing our children's structural limitations early allows them to get acquainted with gravity as a friend versus an enemy. When reordering a newborn child's fascial body, parents can provide an excellent chance for the energetic template that works with the DNA to make the body's complex material form match. This is how it should be. Energetic template and the meat synchronized. Imagine a child that has a proper relationship to gravity early, enabling them to be good at any sport or movement modality they choose to explore, such as being a soccer star, a wingsuit pilot, an MMA fighter, or a hero. Gravity Body Online School provides the parental team the best structural integration educational resources to help their future champion when they need it the most, before beginning to walk with a deviant and disordered body. At GBA, we offer the very best online resources for all things structural, with a complete set of videos and handbooks with options to, number 1, learn the GBA online school material and use it with your kids and family at your own pace. 2, parents partner up and trade SI work with each other. This is one of the best gifts that keeps on giving forever. Couples that share SI with each other are unknowingly helping to prevent future doctor visits by finding a relationship with gravity and dealing with their musculoskeletal pain. Once the structural principles are clear and some experience is gained, consider offering the gift of SI to family members and friends. Number 3, dedicate yourself to learning the material as a student with a mission for community service. Our testing is automated and always available when and if you want to get certified, which is also automated and integrated in the course. We can help you with the business aspects as a Gravity Body Academy community minister, running a holistic healing practice.